Vista, San Marcos, and Escondido. In June of 2021, we presented the results of the study, which indicated that CCE was in fact financially feasible and feasible from a policy perspective, and staff was directed to further evaluate it. In October of last year, we came to the council with our climate action plan, which was adopted, and it included a measure to join a community choice energy program as one of our climate action measures. As part of that presentation, staff covered CCE and what options the council would be able to consider. Options in the San Diego region include San Diego Community Power and the Clean Energy Alliance, which are both joint powers authority regional groups that include various jurisdictions within the San Diego area. The City Council directed staff to further evaluate membership with the Clean Energy Alliance, which at the time was made up of the cities of Carlsbad, Solana Beach, and Del Mar. CEA obtained energy data for the City of Vista for the last calendar year, 2021, in April of this year, and prepared an analysis based on staff's request. And that's presented in a presentation that the CE staff will cover with you in more detail following my slides. The Clean Energy Alliance is a local CCE that's made up of 5 cities now, which also include Escondido and San Marcos, who joined last year. I believe they launched the majority of their customer service in the 3 cities this year, and they're planning to start the remainder for the other 2 joining cities next year. Their governance structure includes 1 member from each agency and 1 alternate. Each member agency has 1 vote in decisions made by their JPA. There's no weighted vote allowed for. The discretionary funds that are generated by the CCE are distributed commensurate with each energy load from the agency members. As I mentioned, Carlsbad, Del Mar, and Solana Beach were the initial members. Escondido and San Marcos later joined. Right now, along with the City of Vista, the cities of Oceanside and San Clemente are also considering joining, which may happen later this year. With that, I'm going to allow the CEA folks that are here today. Christy Becker, who's their chair and a Carlsbad council member, is here to present, along with their CEO, Barbara Boswell. And we're going to go ahead and let them present their slides.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I'm actually a council member from the city of Solana Beach, instead of Carlsbad, I think is what you said. But I am the chair of the Clean Energy Alliance, and I wanted to be here to answer any questions and to also just briefly go over the beginnings of our program. I think we have the slides.
Yeah, she's just putting them up now.
Okay. I'm sorry we won't be able to see the mayor. So again, we heard that you already know that we were founded by Carlsbad, Del Mar, and Solana Beach. We began serving our customers in May of 2021. We have 60,000 customers, and we have a 92.5% participation rate. The 3 cities selected to have a 75% carbon-free power supply as their default. But I think the beauty of this program is that there's choice. Your residents and your businesses can either choose to opt up to 100% renewable energy. They can opt down to a 50% renewable energy. They can also opt out of the program entirely if that is their choice. So again, we're bringing choice to your city. And again, you've already heard that the cities of Escondido and San Marcos are going to be joining us, and they're already on our board helping us make our decisions, even though they won't be launching until April of 2023. That will bring CEA up to 160,000 residents and businesses. All of our cities will be reaching or exceeding our climate action plan goals, and that will be reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So far, Clean Energy Alliance has taken a really conservative approach to administration. We have a very low overhead, and I think that's important for Vista. If you guys jump on board quickly, you can help us make those decisions, because as we expand, we need to get more staff, and we'll need to make those hiring decisions that we would be happy to have you guys join with us. We also have a Citizens Advisory Commission that 2 members of your public would be on, and that commission is starting to make those decisions about which programs we want to do with those CEA reserves. And I think you heard mentioned that that's important because distribution of the revenues are based on your energy load size, which helps a city the size of Vista. So we have an experienced CEO, we have an experienced attorneys, we have also a very fabulous marketing firm called Trepepi Smith, and they would be on board for you guys for all of 2023 to help educate your businesses and your residents all about the benefits of CEA, which is really important because I don't know if you know that Solana Beach was the first to have their community choice energy program back in 2018, and it was upon us to go to our farmers markets and those type of things, and it just will be so much a smooth rollout for you guys to have this marketing firm out there helping you organize and educate people. So on behalf of Carlsbad, Del Mar, Solana Beach, San Marcos, and Escondido, we would love to have you partner with us.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. It is an absolute pleasure to be here in person to present the results of the analysis that Clean Energy Alliance has prepared in evaluating the impacts of CEA serving the residents and businesses of Vista. The analysis is based on electric usage by the customers, SDG&E customers in calendar year 2021. So it's based on Vista's actual usage, and it applies Clean Energy Alliance's current rates and cost of service. The difference between this and a feasibility study is that it's actually utilizing rates and costs that are being incurred by CEA at this point in time. One caveat is that it is based on today's rates and costs, and those things will change between now and when we begin serving Vista. But it does give a sneak peek into what the analysis looks like. The analysis does determine that based on CEA's current rates and Vista's energy usage, that sufficient revenue is generated to meet the cost of serving customers, including meeting our minimum reserve requirements. Should Vista City Council determine that it would like to join CEA, that you would be considering that sometime this summer, and we would be able to begin serving Vista customers starting in 2024. And that timeline is established by the California Public Utilities Commission. So the first step in the evaluation is looking at Vista's customer base. And they're broken down by the various classifications, such as residential, commercial, industrial, agriculture, pumping, and street lighting. There are just under 40,000 service accounts within the city of Vista. The majority of those accounts are residential. Your energy used by your customers in 2021 was 353,000 megawatt hours, which is the unit of measurement for electricity. And as opposed to the number of accounts, the highest user or consumer of electricity is in the commercial and industrial classification, which is not unusual. Residential customers don't tend to use an average same amount as industrial commercial usage. Adding Vista would increase CEA's retail sales by approximately 27%. And this is unadjusted at this point for opt-outs. And as we continue on through the analysis, we did assume that approximately 10% of the customers would decide not to stay with Clean Energy Alliance, just to be conservative in our approach. But as mentioned by our chair, we're serving about 92.5% of customers, so we're below that 10% opt-out rate. We compared our current rates and the exit fees that would be paid by the departed customers to SDG&E's current generation rate. We compete with SDG&E for the electricity being sold, not the delivery portion. We don't maintain wires and power lines and poles. We're not called upon if the lights go out. SDG&E continues to be responsible for that. We are buying the electricity that then SDG&E delivers to customers. Comparing SDG&E's current rates to our current adopted rate, you can see that SDG&E is just over 15 cents per kilowatt hour. Our rate that we charge customers for the electricity is 11 cents. When customers leave SDG&E, they do pay SDG&E what's commonly known as an exit fee or power charge indifference adjustment. That's to make up for contracts that SDG&E has entered into on behalf of the customers that they're now liquidating on the open market. And to the extent they incur losses, those losses then are made up through the exit fees. We used the 2022 exit fee vintage as a baseline, and taking into account that, the customers would still be paying approximately 9% lower per kilowatt hour rate than they currently pay SDG&E. By comparison, our current Clean Energy Alliance customers in Carlsbad and Del Mar, the comparison is a 2% discount because their exit fee is a bit higher than what's shown here. So translating that into an average customer bill, which typically customers really are interested in the bottom line, we used what the average residential usage in the city of Vista is, which is 342 kilowatt hours per month. We compared our three power supply products to SDG&E's default energy product, which is from 31% renewable sources. And our three options are 50% renewable, 75% carbon-free, or 100% renewable. The first line in this chart is the generation, which is the electricity. It's taking that rate that we saw in the prior slide and multiplying it by the usage to come up with how much our customers are paying for the actual electricity. The next line factors in the premiums related to the 75% carbon-free and 100% renewable energy power supply products. And then we include in there the exit fees, or PCIA, and also franchise fees. It is noteworthy that the City of Vista's general fund would not see any loss with regards to franchise fees they currently receive from SDG&E. SDG&E still continues to pay the same level of franchise fee based on their rates that they're currently provided for in the franchise-free agreement. So looking strictly at the generation-related costs, are 50% renewable and 75% carbon-free, are lower on average per month. Actually, all three power supply products, including the 100% renewable, are lower as compared to SDG&E's renewable. And then adding in the delivery charges, which are the same whether a customer is with SDG&E or takes service from Clean Energy Alliance. You can see what the total average bill is. The dollar savings per month on the 50% renewable is $2.94, or a 2% overall savings total bill. And then the further on down the line, the adjustments are the savings.
I don't appear to be getting audio either. What could be going on?
Madam Mayor, is that your microphone? Can you mute it? Or somebody's on Zoom who needs to mute their microphone, please.
So key assumptions with regards to serving the City of Vista. One is a start date. When we look at the analysis, we try to identify which month is the most fiscally optimal month, but also has the least amount of potential issues for customers. And generally, it's in the spring, and we've identified April of 2024 as being the optimal month for enrollment. As I mentioned earlier, we also assume that 90% of eligible customers would be enrolling, with the exception of street lighting, which would be the city accounts, and we would assume serving all of those accounts. The revenues are based on Clean Energy Alliance's current rates, and they're maintained through the analysis through the several years. And our costs reflect our costs for our portfolio. So it assumes the higher renewable energy as the base product. So then the next step we look at is the overall then fiscal impact to Clean Energy Alliance of serving those current SDG&E customers. Our fiscal year is the same as the City of Vista. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. So fiscal year 2024 would really only be 2.5 or so months of service. So we really focus on the first fiscal year of service, which is 2025. And based on the assumptions previously mentioned, our net operating margin, as determined by taking the revenues generated minus the power supply costs and billing and other costs. You can see that the power supply costs make up about 90% of our budget. It's the number one expense to running a CCA. What we do, the analysis shows we would generate about $4.5 million in operating margin. And then we deduct from that our reserve contribution. We have an adopted policy of setting aside 5% of revenues to an operating reserve. And we deduct that before determining what net surplus there may be. And then that net surplus is then the board determines how those funds would be utilized, whether they are used to develop programs, whether we want to bolster the reserve or use it in any other way. And then in 2025, those costs, that the net surplus goes up. You'll notice that our power supply costs are lower in 2026 than they are in 2025. That's not because we're selling less electricity. It's because as we enter into contracts and we're buying contracts further out in the future, the cost of those contracts per kilowatt hour is actually lower. And so now that we're buying energy and buying out in the future, we can drive down our costs, future costs of power by entering into contracts today. And that helps us to lower our costs. So what does the timeline look like with regards to this? And I noticed I didn't change the timing of the assessment report. We actually will be bringing the results to the Clean Energy Alliance Board at their May meeting, the end of this month, for all three cities, Vista, Oceanside, and San Clemente. We would be looking to Vista to consider its resolution to join Clean Energy Alliance and have the first reading of the ordinance that establishes a CCA in the month of June, with the second reading of the ordinance to occur in June or July. And then that ordinance becomes effective 30 days after the second reading. And it's at that point that then the Vista board members could then be seated on the CEA board once the ordinance is effective. Clean Energy Alliance would be considering the resolution approving Vista joining and directing the preparation of an implementation plan amendment during the month of July. And that implementation plan amendment is the document filed with the California Public Utilities Commission to notify them that Vista is joining a CCA and outlines the process under which that will occur. And then the PUC then certifies that document. That draft document would come before the CEA board, which would include the Vista board member, in October of 2022 for then filing with the PUC by the end of December. That does conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to entertain questions that the council may have at this time.
Thank you very much. Okay, we do have one member of the public that has public comment on this item. That is Teresa Reichley. If you would come forward, and you have 3 minutes to address the council. Good afternoon, how are you?
Thank you. Mayor Ritter, council members, I thank you for the opportunity to enter the discussion regarding community choice energy. My name is Teresa Reichley, and I represent the Creation Care Ministry at St. Francis of Assisi Church. And we have addressed the council previously on climate action issues and on creation care. And we can't encourage you enough to proceed post haste to enter into an alliance so that we can begin to provide a competitive pricing for the community of Vista for energy, not only to meet green gas emissions goals, but also to provide maybe a financial break for the households of Vista for their energy. Our organization looks a lot at the social equity issues regarding all of the climate action or energy or environmental issues. And I strongly encourage you to address those issues in advance and not wait to look backwards at how you might be able to provide more support for the lower income families in our communities, the lower income households, either by way of a eventual lowering of rates or of providing rebates for lower income families. And again, I don't know how that works since you're joining an existing alliance, but I would like to see Vista take a leadership role in addressing the social equity concerns that go along with all environmental questions. Our ministry grew out of Pope Francis' encyclical Laudato Si, the care of our common home, and he addresses the issue that a great many of the science and economically motivated environmental changes have a stronger negative impact on lower income and marginalized communities. And I think that we would like to see the city of Vista really be in the forefront of looking at how they can benefit the neediest members of the community. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we'll go to our council members, starting with Councilman Joe Green.
All right, I think I am probably the least knowledgeable of the next three of us who are going to be asking about CCA, but I was wondering, the data that you provided, is it simply from May of 2021 to present, or is it from 2018 to present? Because the numbers that you gave as far as the percentage of a lower bill and the cost of energy and things like that, I'm just wondering what's the time period that data was tracked over? Because I wrote down so many different dates. I don't know who started in 5 of 2021 and who actually started in 2018.
Right. The average customer bill is based on taking the average kilowatt hour usage that a average household uses times the rates that our current rate
Gotcha.
to determine how much the customer would pay for that electricity, and then also how much they would pay SDG&E. And then we compare it to what they're currently paying SDG&E based on their rate. So it's based on today's information.
So it's not necessarily an average. It's just like, hey, if we're putting apples to apples today, these are the numbers that we come up with. And just so I was clear on it, it looks like initially the reason why this is feasible for us is because we can get the energy cheaper than SDG&E does. It looked like we get it for 9% cheaper when all was said and done. But overall, after their delivery fees and things, we could be saving our residents between 2 to 3% overall in their actual usage charges, depending on what program they select. Is that correct?
Correct. And that's based on today's rates.
Yeah.
That comparison I guarantee you it's going to change. It's not going to stay that amount. It's possible that by that point, the customers could be paying more. So I don't want to say that we can guarantee a savings. However, we do have in our JPA that is a priority, that we save in a minimum 2% on the generation. So on the generation part where you saw 9%, our goal is 2%. The 2% you saw on the bill comparison actually is the total bill. Obviously, we can't guarantee a savings on delivery because we don't compete in that area. But it is a goal. We just can't guarantee it because we have to set rates to cover our costs. But based on today's information, we can provide that savings.
And over the months that you've tracked it, or the months that you've tracked it from May of 2021 until now, or are they from 2018? So I'm just kind of wondering, like, that's great. This month we're 2% cheaper. Was it 2% cheaper last month, the month before, or has it been gradually increasing or decreasing? What's the trend that we see right now?
So in calendar year 2021, as mentioned by Chair Becker, Solana Beach actually created their community choice energy program in 2018. So those customers are in what's called, they're in a different vintage for exit fees than Carlsbad and Del Mar.
Okay.
In calendar year 2021, their vintage was very high. Their cost per kilowatt hour for that exit fee was very high. Those customers, actually, their bills were higher than they would have paid as an SDG&E customer. However, Carlsbad and Del Mar, we achieved a savings. So for 2021, from May till December, Solana Beach customers paid more on average. Carlsbad, Del Mar paid about 2% generation rate and a little less than 1% total bill.
Okay. But
So
if we
fast forward to 2022, the rates change every year. SDG&E adjusts those rates every year. Solana Beach now has a much lower exit fee than Carl's, so it's flipped flop. Although they're all now saving.
Okay. And when we join in this JPA, will we all get the same exit fee? Is there a saving at scale per se when we all say, hey, we're going to do this together? Can the exit? Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm nodding, acknowledging your question.
Okay.
So Carlsbad, Del Mar are in what's called the 2020 vintage.
Okay.
Escondido and San Marcos, when we begin serving them in 2023, they'll be in the 2022 vintage.
Okay.
If Vista decides to join, they would be in the 2023 vintage.
Okay.
So each of those communities will be in different exit fee vintages.
Okay.
However, we do, and they do have different rates.
Okay.
Some years they go up, some years they go down.
Okay. So there's really, it's like a crystal ball, roll the dice. No clue what the exit fee vintage will be by the time we actually enact our policy.
Correct. Although we do have a significant effort. We have hired analysts who are experts in the energy field to really analyze SDG&E's proceedings.
Okay.
Look at the underlying assumptions they make sure they're applying CPUC rules correctly.
Yeah.
I will tell you they find errors. They find errors that if they weren't caught, would have resulted in customers paying more. So we've been able to bring those rates down as far as possible, and it's a continual battle at the PUC about exit fees because we're not sure we completely agree that they should be paying for them.
I understand how that battle could be, so that's fantastic. Another question I had, you mentioned load size and distribution. Does that have to do with the amount of energy that you're distributing to the city, or does that have to do, I don't really know that terminology per se, so if you could kind of explain that to me. Has nothing to do with the revenue share, right? It's more of an energy share?
Yeah, so when we talk about comparing electricity usage in one city versus another, the general term is load, how much load is being served in your community. So it's how much electricity is being used by your customers within your community.
And it looked like our customers would help increase your load size by about 24% or something like that. Okay.
That's correct.
Perfect. And let's see. So SDG&E still maintains the infrastructure, which is basically why we're paying that servicing fee and probably their exiting fee.
Yeah.
The marketing firm that you spoke of, is that taken care of in the CCA's general budget and?
In Clean Energy Alliance's budget, right?
Okay,
we hire them. Yeah,
Too
we hire
many
them.
acronyms these days. Gotcha. Okay.
There's a lot of acronyms in community choice energy. I also want to state for the council, but also for the public,
Please.
they continue to receive the bill from SDG&E.
Okay.
So they do not receive a second bill from Clean Energy Alliance. All of their electric charges are on the one single bill. And there is a section that reflects Clean Energy Alliance charges for the electricity.
So SDG&E pays the money direct to Clean Energy Alliance?
Correct.
As opposed, so the cities never have to take care of billing in-house, and you guys never have to staff for that billing or customer service needs and things like that at that particular JPA.
We do have a data manager and a call center who receives the electric usage from SDG&E, calculates the charges, and then sends those back to SDG&E for presentation on the bill.
Okay.
But the city does not ever have to train anyone on how to read a bill or explain a bill. We have a trained call center that that takes those calls.
Okay, and I heard you say it doesn't mess with our general fund, which means
Does not.
we don't have to pay that person. Okay, sorry, I wrote down lots of questions, ladies. Hopefully I'm getting all this. Let's see, 60,000, 60. Where do the 7.5% go? You said 92.5% opt in. If 7.5% opt out, does that mean that you're just sticking with SDG&E
Correct.
100%? So does like a contract come to them where they have the option, or once we elect to do it as a city, it just automatically shifts and then the customer has to opt out if they don't want to do it?
That's correct. It's
So-
the way the law was written that allows for community choice energy, it's written that all eligible customers are automatically enrolled
Okay.
unless they opt out. And that's really the biggest area that we see the most complaints from the community is, why did you automatically enroll me?
Yeah.
And it's because we don't have an alternative. But we do send out a minimum of 4 notices.
Okay.
So there are 2 notices that are sent out before they're automatically enrolled, and then 2 more notices after they're enrolled. In addition, we do try to do outreach, such as being available at farmers markets, concerts in the park, anywhere where there might be a large community, part of your community that are in attendance, that we can be there with a booth and answer questions.
Perfect. And then my 2 more questions, and I'll leave you alone. And this one I think you already answered for me. You said San Marcos and Escondido would get to start in April of 2023. If Vista, basically we said, hey, we want to put it on our June agendas, you have it posted on your timelines, we wouldn't be able to start until April of 2024. Is that correct?
That's
and
correct.
just because of the Public Utility Commission guidelines, there's no other way to get that done quick or anything like that?
The quickest we could do it is January 2024, but we don't recommend that because that's the month that, well, number one, with the holidays, it'd be easy for them to miss the notices.
Gotcha.
But also, that's when SDG&E has their new rates.
Okay.
And we don't have visibility to what those rates are going to be in advance. And the number one questions people have is, what is this going to cost me?
Yeah.
And in order to be able to do that analysis, we need visibility.
We need to
the
know what
rates.
the vintage exit fee is for the year that we're actually exiting, correct? That's
correct.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the last question that you talked about was the net surplus of the CEA. It looked like there was about 2.92 or 2.82 million in surplus annually, and you said that the board would determine how to use that. And I know we had a community member speak of savings for customers and rebates to low-income families, and a lot of this has to not only do with revenue and how we can kind of get it from SDG&E and back into the pockets of our customers, but how is that decision made, and is there any type of conversation in the works to say, hey, based off of your load size, if there's 2.82 million left over and you're 24% responsible, Vista's allocated that, or 13% to this city or whatever. So I'm just wondering, when you get to that area, is there any type of, bylaws or rules as far as allocating funds? I just hate to have like a few other cities that have, the vote, and if it is a single vote, there's no weighted vote. We want to make sure, my job is to always fight for my city and make sure that whatever savings I can get for my city, I'm getting for my city, and whichever one of us is lucky enough to serve on that board needs to be in that position. So if you could speak to that, that'd be great.
Very good question. First and foremost, customers who are on the discounted programs through SDG&E do not lose those programs. They continue to receive the benefit of those discounts, whether they go with Community Choice Energy, SCEA, or stay with SDG&E. In terms of how are the program funds going to be allocated, our joint powers agreement does stipulate that program funds, the communities are to receive the benefit on a percentage of their load to the total. However, the policies to implement that have yet to be determined. And as Chair Becker mentioned, coming in and joining the board now, Vista would have the opportunity to weigh in on those types of policy decisions in terms of how are those decisions going to be made.
Okay.
So
we might be allocating all those funds for a program that's to be used at scale for our county, with different percentages being allocated for each city based off of their load size. But the actual programming still has to be presented and voted on and all that good stuff like normal government things do.
What programs are being implemented are yet to be voted on, but the JPA does stipulate that every community will receive their fair share based on their load.
That is amazing. That's what I really, really appreciate you breaking that down for me. Thank you so much for answering all my questions. I look forward to what my council members have to say as well. Thank you.
Councilwoman Contreras.
Thank you so much, Chair Becker and CEO Barbara, for coming and reviewing all this information with us. This is, I've 100% been a proponent for community choice energy for a long time, and I've been wanting to save our customers any bit of money and to have more oversight is critical, especially as SDG&E continues to have runaway costs that are questionable. And I know I have a lot of constituents that it's a really painful bill sometimes, on top of everything else that has increased during the pandemic. So this can't happen soon enough. I really was hoping that we would be joining this year, would have committed to this decision last year. But we have the opportunity before us to begin this program in 2024, and I appreciate giving that feedback as to why April is chosen. April is one of my favorite months. It's my birthday month, so I look forward to having being able to join CEA for a variety of reasons. Because not only do we want to save our customers and our constituents money, but we also want to make a committed effort to impacting positively the one little spaceship that we have to live on, which is Earth. And we haven't been very good stewards of this planet. So we have the ability to, continue to have electricity in our homes and in our businesses, but we have the ability to choose how much of an impact we're able to make, whether, it's financially we're constrained to, 75% renewable energy, and we want to strive for 100%, and maybe in the future that's something that even through CEA as a mechanism for, collecting the funds, the bills that we pay for energy, and being able to reinvest that in different communities. I think that's incredible because, I know my colleagues here on council have, since I've been here in 2018, have gone through council meetings where I like to pull SDG&E and just give an idea of how much we're paying for electricity on a monthly basis, whether it be $109,272.56 or $196,514, right? None of that is going back into the community, absolutely zero. And I think we have a personal responsibility as a local first rung of government to give more choice to individuals. We've done that on a number of fronts. I'm really proud of this council for continuing to reevaluate ideological and philosophical positions and take a look at what currently is happening in the reality of our day-to-day lives and the lives of our constituents, and take a look at what we can do to help to make sure that people's day-to-day experience can be just a little bit better. I do have one question, though, because I am a little bit, there's one point of concern that I have, and that is the 5% of revenues adopted to reserve. We've, here in the city of Vista, there was a time historically where we didn't have reserves and it was not a good idea. And we've gotten to a point where we have a lot of reserves, right? So I want to ask you questions about the reserve that CEA has. If you could please go over that, because what I wouldn't want to do is create a situation where we're trying to get to a climate resiliency and sustainability, but financially we don't have the backing to do that. So just to ensure a long lifespan, forever lifespan for CEA, if you could just go over how the reserve mechanism works, all of that. Thanks.
We have an adopted policy, the board adopted, that establishes that 5% of revenues are to go into our operating reserve to build to 25% of revenues. And beyond that, that they continue to contribute however much they can to achieve a 40%, but the minimum goal is 25%. And we're just now getting to the end of our first year of operations. Next month is our 1 year anniversary, or this month, sorry, we're in May. This month, we're at our 1 year anniversary. So we haven't established programs because all of our net reserves actually are going into our operating reserve. And to your point, we want to make sure that CEA is long-term financially feasible. That is the reason the board took a very conservative approach with regards to staff. When you look at us compared to other programs, we don't have a lot of staff, but we have enough to successfully launch and operate the agency and put what we can into our reserves and offer a bit of a savings.
Awesome. And just as a follow-up to that, so with the goal being a minimum of 25% reserves, if, let's just pretend like everything happens perfectly, Vista joins. I'm thrilled to hear that San Clemente is looking at joining, because the more users we have, the better. Oceanside joins, San Clemente joins, and we're ready to go, in 2024. What's the estimated time frame for us to get to 25% operating reserve?
So 5% a year, it would be 5 years. However, we've been incrementally contributing since the beginning. And so it wouldn't take quite 5 years to get to 25% of our new, now higher revenue base.
So theoretically, depending on what the makeup of the board is, there could be a push for allocating more more to the operating reserve to get there faster, so then we can get to a stable foundation and we don't have to worry about cutting back programs, right? So we can have a sustainable rollout. I think that will be an interesting conversation to see that unfold, because there are pluses and minuses to any kind of strategy. So I really appreciate you going over that, because when I heard 5%, I'm like, man, if we're only going to have a 5% reserve on this thing and something happens, it could really be detrimental. But this is a much clearer understanding, and it makes me feel really positive about moving forward in this direction as soon as possible. Okay, and I wanted to address the exit fees, because I know the CPUC it's just been like madness trying to figure out what these fees are. So say we were to move forward and we decide, hey, we want to do this. We're pretty much locked in, right? So we're at the mercy of whatever the exit fee is, or, is there an ability, not just for us, but if another one of these cities is looking at going in and then they see that the exit fee is like not advantageous for that time, is there a pullback? How does that work? Because I want to make sure that everybody kind of moves forward with a concerted effort, and we don't, because it could really affect our projections.
Yeah, the exit fee is really, I think, challenge to kind of wrap our heads around and deal with. So the exit fee is charged to customers on their bill based on their usage. That fee is set annually by SDG&E, and it's based on what they project any loss they're going to have on contracts they're liquidating. It's in existence as long as they're holding contracts that they've identified have been entered into on behalf of customers in the city of Vista. So we say it'll be about 10 years until a good bunch of those contracts will roll off, and we'll start seeing a decline in what that exit fee looks like, and eventually should go away once they no longer have any contracts. There has been significant efforts between the city CCA statewide and the utilities at the PUC to try and come up with strategies that have a positive effect on exit fees by reducing them. One of those strategies is just getting underway to be implemented, which is to allocate a portion of SDG&E's portfolio of contracts, make them available for Clean Energy Alliance to procure. So right now, our customers are paying for electricity that they don't have the benefit of, right? They're just filling a gap for SDG&E. If we have those contracts, we don't have to buy as much, so that reduces our costs, and it reduces the customer's exit fee because they're no longer having to pay a portion of that contract. It's the one area that is a one that we see fighting with SDG&E and the other CCAs with their utilities for some time. But I'm happy to see that we've made some headway, but there's still a long way to go.
Awesome. And okay, this is just such a big unknown. And just to clarify, so the exit fees are analyzed by city.
They're analyzed by vintage, so
Okay, so it's the whole cohort for that year.
so any community or that's departing in between July 1 of 2023 and June of 2024, whether they're joining Clean Energy Alliance or San Diego Community Power or another CCA, would be part of that vintage. It's not by city, it's just by year of departure.
Okay. And there's currently no legal mechanism that forces SDG&E to allow the Community Choice Energy JPA to utilize their contracts.
There's not, and not only that, SDG&E has not been very transparent with regards to even the contracts that the customers are paying for. So we're chipping away at that slowly but surely and getting to where the PUC is agreeing with us and requiring SDG&E to kind of open things up and give us visibility.
I think that's a really important point that you just said, though, because a lot of times when we're having discussions about different topics here, the five of us, we want to be able to lobby for the appropriate changes. So us being able to join CEA is like joining a League of Cities. It's like joining something, a different concerted effort to be able to bring transparency to the consumer. That is something that we really don't have. So I think that you illustrated something for me that I wasn't even thinking about. And I have a question regarding energy rates. Actually, Councilmember Green reminded me of this. Right now, the way that energy that we pay for it is there's peak hours, and those peak hours now are like when people are awake and doing things. So it's become really expensive just to carry out on your day, unless you want to start laundry at like midnight. So what does that look like under the CEA structure? Are there peak hours? Can you kind of go over that a little bit?
Yeah. So in order to make it easy for customers to compare between Clean Energy Alliance and SDG&E, we offer the same rate schedules with the same time of use periods that SDG&E does. However, when you look at the per kilowatt hour rates being charged, our rates are lower. And then you, of course, have to add in the exit fee. But the average bill comparison that I showed you, those percentage differences would be applicable across the board, because when we set our rates, we start with SDG&E rates, we back out the exit fee, and then we apply a discount to all rate schedules that are being offered to customers. So the peak period is still 4 to 9. So it's still the most expensive time of day. It's just our per kilowatt hour rate is lower.
And is there any kind of decoupling that happens in the future? I don't know how economically advantageous it would be to decouple from SDG&E's rate structure when it comes to peak hours. But is that something that the board members would have the ability to discuss in the future when there's a really good financial stability at CEA.
Yeah, absolutely. The boards of any community choice energy program have at this point in time, have complete rate setting autonomy. Of course, the PUC would like to insert themselves, but at this point, they have they play no role in approving our rates. And yes, the board would have the option to offer rates that are different. One thing, though, to point out about that is that the way that time of use periods are structured now, they more correlate to what energy costs are at different points of the day. And because there's so much solar available during the day, it's no longer, at one point it was, the daytime was the most expensive, and it was give your appliances the afternoon off, and it's kind of shifted because we have so much solar now production during the day. And so, we can certainly look at different, we could eliminate time of use and just have the flat fee, which is still available to customers, by the way. So you can still say, I don't want to be in time of use, I want to just pay the same amount, all the time. But it does, from a business perspective, stepping back and now putting on the business hat, because we are operating, a business, to have the higher rates at the same time as our higher costs helps to balance our budget.
Right. So there's some strategy there, but there's flexibility, room for flexibility, which I think is really important. Okay, and let me see. Speaking about the fact that during the day when we have solar, right, it's very cost competitive. So the rates, they're peaking when maybe that energy isn't available. So, when it comes to the future of energy generation, solar is a big part of it. But, moving forward, there are different methods, including hydrogen, right? So what's the ability to really build some more resistance with, microgrids or something like that? Is that something that CEA is looking at or planning to discuss in the future? I mean, it's probably like a 10 to 20 year future that we're talking about right now, but it has to start somewhere.
Yep. Yes, and we have plans to look at all different types of technologies with regards to energy generation. One of the programs that the board will be considering in the coming fiscal year is a feed-in tariff, which is providing a incentive to encourage smaller scale renewable energy generating facilities. They're not rooftop for a household, but big enough to provide a portion, locally generated, to provide a portion of our electricity. Microgrids, we want a mix of renewable energies, because if we rely too much on solar, you don't want that because you have all your energy in all the same time. We need to layer in the battery storage. And so that will, to your point about what flexibility do we have with rates, the more that we can have a diverse portfolio, have battery storage, so that we have cheaper energy, accumulate all that cheap energy during the day and use it in the more expensive time of day, we can offer cheaper rates at the different times.
That's a really exciting future, especially as, hopefully we join, and as more cities decide to join, that's more surface area that we have to generate electricity and store it. So I think that it's a very promising future, and I'm really excited to move forward. I'm 100% behind getting to join CEA as soon as possible. And those are all my questions, Barbara. I do have another question, and it has to do more with the city. So I'm going to ask our city manager, Patrick Johnson. Patrick, I have a question, because I know that we have, as a council, there's been a lot of debate, and there's a minority that's for 100% renewable energy and a majority that is not. However, do we have the ability to say, because I think as a good corporate citizen, our city of Vista should be setting the example. I thought that we should be setting the example for single-use plastic and removing that. And it was really great when we had the employee recognition. There were different types of plates used. That was pretty cool. So do we have the ability to say, hey, you know what, the city of Vista, we are committed to, if we join CA, that we are committed to the 100% renewable energy?
I believe that the CEA gives the option for people, like Barbara said, they can go 50%, 75%, or 100, but I believe the city has the ability to set a baseline standard. Looking at Mr. Conley as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say before I stop saying anything for my turn, that's been like an hour now, that I am also 100% committed to 100% energy. And if we don't have a majority that wants to take that commitment to, a blanket state for the city, I really do think that we have the ability to be examples and lead with the highest amount of stewardship that we can. And I 100% believe that this city should commit to 100% renewable energy, at least with the energy usage that we have as a city. With that, I'm very thankful for all the information and the conversation, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of my colleagues.
Councilwoman Melendez.
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion and everyone for being here. I'd like to think that I know, a lot about climate, environmental issues, but I have a lot to learn. And this was a very, very helpful outline of kind of our path forward. And it seems like there's two, kind of big decisions, right, that ultimately have to be made. And that's the decision regarding when to start. And, being able to see the rationale, although I would like to just go for it today, right? There is ultimately a cost saving that customers will be able to experience with a start in April 2024. So that's definitely something that we can look forward to. And I know there's also the decision regarding how much renewable energy is used, and there's a cost savings at 75% renewable for customers. But I agree with Councilmember Contreras, if the city of Vista still experiencing a cost savings could choose 100% renewable energy, that would definitely be a leadership opportunity for us as a city. And a lot of my questions were already answered, but there was the topic of kind of customer responsibility, and that there's this auto-enrollment that happens with notices. So since 92% of people opt in, they're auto-enrolled, are there any other customer responsibilities that we might need to know about or anticipate so that people can be well informed and prepared for the changes? And of course, having the opportunity to opt out as well is, good for us to hear about. But it sounds like the primary responsibility would be to opt out if they were to choose that. Would you be able to speak to that at all?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Customers have the choice. The City Council will determine which of the 3 power supply products customers would be automatically enrolled in. They have the choice of choosing an alternate. So as part of the noticing requirements with regards to being automatically enrolled is also to notify them of the options, and they could choose to select one of the others. So if the city were to determine that they wanted the 100% renewable as the default, customers could still choose to move into one of the other 2 options. So that's the one area, and then the opting out would be the other area. The other determining factor is with relation to customers who have rooftop solar. Excuse me. Enrolling in a CCA has a little more complicated for customers with rooftop solar, and so we send a special letter to those customers, letting them know what our net energy metering program looks like as compared to SDG&E, so they can make an informed decision with regards to whether or not they want to remain in the CCA or opt out. But other than that, there isn't much other decision-making that the customers need to make.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification. I appreciate that. I guess my other question would be more of an administrative question, if perhaps Mr. Conley could answer. I see a lot of demonstration of the cost savings for the customers. Would you be able to speak a little bit more to the administrative costs of the change to a CCE? And, would we be seeing a reduction in our administrative costs, or would this change result in increased staffing and increased, non-energy costs that would, perhaps increase or change in any way?
So the expectation, if we were to join CEA, is that all the administrative costs would be borne by CEA, that the city would not have to increase staff. Our costs would be limited to the cost that they need to prepare the PUC application at our initial onset, but beyond that, we do not expect to have additional staff costs if we join CEA.
And at what point would we be completing that application with an anticipated start date of April 2024?
If the council takes action in June, which we can bring back to you based on our direction today, then we would submit to CEA upon approval of the ordinance, and then they could take their application to PUC at the end of this year. That would set us up for a start in April of '24.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for the info. That is all my questions.
Thank you very much. I was curious to know more about the net energy metering. I was looking at your published rates. It looks like, am I understanding correctly, that you pay 6 cents per kilowatt hour generated?
That's correct. So at the end of a customer's, what's known as a relevant period, 12-month relevant period, the customer's account is trued up. So we look at how much energy did their system generate and how much did they use throughout that same 12-month period. If there's excess generation that went basically onto the grid for purposes of providing energy to anywhere else, we pay 6 cents per kilowatt hour. SDG&E's rate fluctuates monthly. The highest amount they've paid is 4.5 cents, so our rate is higher than SDG&E.
And as the PUC considers changes to net energy metering, how might that affect residential customers in Vista if we were to join? Would they be grandfathered?
The PUC is considering what is a very significant change, as you're referring to, with regards to net energy metering, that would result in customers with rooftop solar paying significantly more than they do now per month. The minimum charges that are being discussed would be the same whether they're an SDG&E customer or a Clean Energy Alliance customer. Where they may be different and where the board has discretion is our board can choose currently, as previously mentioned, our rates schedules mirror those of SDG&E. Our board would have the ability to create a different rate schedule should they choose with regards to net energy metering, but it only impacts the generation portion of the bill. They're still subject to whatever fees or charges or terms and conditions related to delivery that SDG&E would be implementing.
And does a solar customer, residential solar customer, is there a certain time of the year when they can enter and exit?
So there's not a certain time of year. At the time a customer leaves SDG&E and joins a Community Choice Energy program, their account is automatically trued up, whether they're at the end of their relevant period or not. When we enrolled our customers in Carlsbad and Del Mar in May, we actually enrolled all of the net energy metering customers in June. We considered doing staggered enrollments, but at that point in time, the exit fee vintage for customers enrolling in June versus those that would begin enrolling after July 2021 were significantly different. And those customers that would have enrolled later would have been paying a significantly higher exit fee that we felt the downside of a midterm true-up outweighed or were better off than paying that higher exit fee. And we didn't have a lot of negative feedback. As we're considering Escondido and San Marcos, we're going to look again at all aspects of at what point do we enroll customers? Do we do an ongoing enrollment for every month when the customers treat up? Because it does create winners and losers. You know, there may be customers that have a large balance due that they were relying on their system to offset, that they lose that benefit if they're trued up when an enrollment takes place.
And I was going to ask you, I was also going to ask about high usage tiers. Does your rate schedule also employ usage tiers?
The high usage tiers really apply to delivery charges, and those charges still apply. Our rate schedules for generation only differentiate for time of use and what time did you use it as opposed to how much did you use.
So those tiers are transmission charges, not generation charges, is what you're saying, right?
Correct.
Okay. And let's see, I had one more question with regard to the solar that escapes me right now. I'll come back if I can remember it. To Councilman Joe Green.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So in regards to, and mine is about solar, I actually have rooftop solar, and recently the bills from SDG&E have changed and they've shifted based off of the time of use charges. And what I noticed is that my system pumps a good amount into the grid, a lot more than I use sometimes, but I'm charged such a peak rate, almost 4 times the amount that I'm charged during the day. So at the end of the bill, when it all comes said and done, even though I don't really have to pay it, it still shows that I have a balance, because even if I pump twice as much energy as I use all day long, they charge me 4 times more for those kilowatts. So my question for you, as somebody who knows energy, is does it cost you more money to give me that energy between the hours of 5 and 9 o'clock at night, or do you just charge more because you can and that's kind of what's always been done?
Yeah, energy is more expensive for us to buy between 5 and 9 because the sun is starting to set and there isn't as much supply as there is during the day. So it is a higher cost to buy that energy that's then ultimately resold than energy being procured.
Is it like 4 times higher cost? Like what's the, I see the smile. I know you don't know exactly what the percentage cost is. It just seems a little ridiculous. And what I'm wondering is solar customers who have battery storage, okay? Because yeah, it's coming to Mr. Green's house as soon as possible. At that point, I will basically be off the grid where I don't have to get power from, anybody in the evening time there. With the changes coming with the PUC, does that have any effect with anybody who has rooftop storage with their own, or rooftop solar with their own battery storage, or that would still be no effect? They would just have the gas bill. Like this wouldn't really affect any of those people because they're already 100% clean energy from the sun, right?
Yeah, so as I understand it, the changes being proposed that all 3 utilities actually are proposing to the PUC, if you never used 1 kilowatt hour of energy from the grid, they're still going to charge you a really high base amount.
Okay.
So you could be utilizing all of only your own energy between your system and your battery, and you're still going to be charged. What they had proposed was a very significant high minimum bill.
Okay, it's to kind of detour people from going that route per se, I would assume.
Yeah, and their reasoning is that, if your system goes down, if it gets cloudy and rainy for 3 days, you're going to be using electricity from the grid. But if you're able to balance it out at the end of a course of a month, that you're not paying anything, you're not contributing anything to the maintenance of the grid, and that other customers are subsidizing, their words, not mine, subsidizing your usage of electricity coming off that grid, and that the utilities are not collecting enough revenue from solar customers for them to pay their fair share of that maintenance, and it's disproportionately affecting non-solar.
Because the energy you're giving them, they're not making enough money for because they're selling it at off-peak hours when you're getting over at night using your energy you made yourself in your battery at your, wow, yeah, awesome.
We could hire you to.
Yeah,
with us
hey,
for the
hey,
PUC.
I may send my resume in for this one because it just seems very, the whole purpose of living off the grid is to live off the grid, but I get that we need gas, I got a gas stove, I got a gas heater, I pay a gas bill, but from an electricity standpoint, I was shocked at the changes in the rate schedules. And, just because of technology, I mean, it seems crazy to me that just because solar was invented, now it's more expensive to run your stuff at night, when before my mom would only do the laundry at night. Like, I could have had close the door during the day, don't run in and out. I don't know how many times I was told that. Now it's like, leave everything open and blast the AC. SDG&E is going to get us at night. So, all right, well, I guess there's nothing they can really do. The best thing is, for a solar customer is to just pray that the PUC doesn't implement a crazy, I guess, annual maintenance fee that would be standard on every solar customer is kind of what seems to be coming down the pike.
Yeah, so what was proposed several months ago was pulled back, and we're anticipating that there will be another proposal coming forward, but it will be significantly different. There was significant lobbying effort to push the governor's office and legislation to put pressure on the PUC to say this is not a good decision, and it is it's opposed to what the state's trying to accomplish with the renewable energy goals, and encouraging everyone to do their part in terms of rooftop solar. There's a mandate that every house have rooftop solar. So now you're going to make them put that on there, but now you're going to charge this really high fee. I mean, there's just some
And
disconnect
is this coming from
there
the
with
federal
policies.
government down to our state, or
State.
it's coming from the state? Okay, wow.
So that's why we believe it was postponed or pulled off the agenda, and it will come back, but
It sounds like, though, I mean, for the consumer, you purchasing back that energy at 6 cents per kilowatt as opposed to SDG&E's, bargain of 4.5 cents per kilowatt, it is better for a consumer in the event they don't have a battery and they want to, remain on the grid and remain service. Us switching a solar customer to this also saves them money overall, which is cool. You mentioned something which was really awesome when you were speaking with Councilwoman Contreras, where you said flat fee pricing, price per kilowatt. You said everybody has the option of doing that. I didn't know that everybody had the option of doing that. And I'm kind of wondering, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but this is a workshop, man. So question is, how does that work, and what is the flat fee per kilowatt? And let's just hypothetically say a solar customer is on a flat fee per kilowatt and they pump a bunch of stuff in their flat fee. Can you then charge them extra money at the peak times if they're on a flat fee? Like, wouldn't it balance out better for a solar customer if they were always on a flat fee program than to be on the peak program?
It could. So SDG&E currently doesn't allow solar customers to select. They're required to be in a time of use.
Yeah, they are.
When you
But
become
with the CEA, we could, right?
with a Clean Energy Alliance, you could select the flat fee.
Okay.
But it's only, again, remember, it's only the generation side, it's not your delivery side. So you're still subject to SDG&E's rate schedules.
Yeah, but the
The
delivery
delivery
side was this $89.32 per month. That seems to stay the same. That doesn't seem to change based off of
So it's
this month's bill.
It's the same for a customer on that rate schedule, and that's not a net energy metering customer. That's a domestic rate, flat rate customer.
Okay. But right
So
now,
your analysis would be different because you're subject to different rate schedules as you're talking about the
Gotcha.
really high time of use periods. Yeah.
So they were going to find a way to balance it out, is what it sounds like to me, numbers-wise, possibly. It's okay. We'll see. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And the whole point of CCE is consumer choice energy. I don't want to mandate everybody in Vista to be on the 100% the time they get there. I personally think if we did that, you'd have a lower retention, okay? Because 92.5% retention is awesome. That's probably stipulating a 50% baseline or 75% baseline. Going to 100%, I think you have a lot of people say, hey, this is exactly the same rates as SDG&E was paying me. What are you doing, City Council? But some people might take that that lower rate, they might stick with it, and then they might see the option of just paying what they were and say, hey, I care about the environment, I'm okay paying more. But I wouldn't be okay, mandating we're at 100% to start, because the consumer choice energy aspect of it, I want the consumer to have that choice. So for me, that's where I stand on that, just so we know. But I probably would be. I'm 100% clean already, man. Let's go.
Deputy Mayor, if I could, I know the mayor's got her hand up, but as we're talking about opting in and opting out, what are the abilities of a customer to opt in to CEA and then go back and forth between SDG&E? Is there time limits that they can do that in a given year?
A customer can decide they want to no longer be a Clean Energy Alliance customer and go back to SDG&E. They can make that decision at any time. What changes with regards to that decision is there's a 4-month window, 2 months prior to enrollment, 2 months after, where the customer can make that change and not be subject to a waiting period. So assuming Vista joins, the council determines they'd like to join, and we enroll customers in April. The 2-month period would end in June, and a customer in September says, this was the wrong decision, I want to go back to SDG&E. SDG&E's rules say they need to give SDG&E 6 months notice, and if they don't want to wait that 6 months, they can return any time, but they're subject to going into what's called a transitional bundled rate, which in essence says they're going to pay the wholesale rate, whatever that is, market rate, throughout that 6 months. If that were to happen today, that's actually a lower rate than the published rate schedules. So it can be, beneficial to the customer, but it could also be not beneficial. But they can still make that election. If they opt out during the 2 months after, they're put right back on their regular rate schedule and don't have this transitional bundled service. They must also stay with SDG&E for 12 months. So they can't go back and forth. They can't flip-flop depending on who's cheaper at one point in time.
Okay, Mayor Ritter.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Do I have gravelly voice like all of you do today and my computer? It's kind of a malfunction somewhere there today. I support going forward with it. I would prefer the 75% because I'm just a conservative person and I prefer to create a balance and go slowly. I worry about, I'm not sure the grid can absorb everybody's going to electric cars and we have to increase the chargers and the cars and then the grid. When people start charging at night, a lot of different people charge at night. I'm not sure the grid, and then we have really hot weather. I want to be sure the grid can hold up, but I don't want to go to 100% renewable. I'd like a balance. I just feel if we have a balance going forward, I just think we need to move slowly. And so that would be my 2 cents, but they're all really good questions. A lot of my questions got answered and they were really good questions and answers about the solar and all of it. So those are just my comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just add, I think the conversation about going 100% maybe got a little confused because I think what Councilwoman Contreras was saying, not to put words in her mouth, but I think I'm correct in saying that she was saying that it would show leadership from the city if the city were to make a selection for the city's energy consumption to be at 100%. And I would just add that I would support that as long as the council would agree to allow residents in the city of Vista the choice to choose the 50, 75, or 100%. I think it's important that consumers have that choice. And for some families, though it looks small now, the rates could change at some point, and I want lower income families to have as much choice in choosing as possible. I think one of the other things that's really important to me is what I heard today is that hopefully it's in the bylaws and cannot be changed with CEA that excess revenues would be returned to the cities based on their based on their power load, and that's not something that the board could change in the future. Is that accurate?
So in the JPA agreement, it stipulates that the program dollars, the benefit of those programs would be commensurate to your percentage of load. So the board could, if there is net surplus and the board determined they wanted to put that money into reserves, then there wouldn't be excess revenue for programs. But to the extent there are programs, to ensure that every community has their fair share of those programs, those program cost benefits are commensurate, whether it be measured in dollars or numbers of customer participation, for example. It may not be a dollar thing, but more, we're going to be able to provide 6,000 customers with something, that we make sure that everybody's percentage of that 6,000 is for their community.
When you
And that is in the JPA.
And when you say 6,000, you're talking about like a low-income benefit of some kind?
I was
or
just trying to think
hypothetically?
if there was a program where we said we can afford to give 6,000 customers a electric water heater, for example.
Okay, I see.
I'm just dreaming something up.
I understand.
We can buy this many electric water heaters, then if Vista's 24%, 25% of the share, you'd get 25% of those, for your customers.
Does the CPUC govern the amount that CCAs are able to charge above and beyond their own costs? In other words, is excess revenue or profit, is it regulated by the CPUC?
The PUC doesn't play any governance role in setting rates or determining programs or procurement decisions. However, as what they term a load-serving entity, we do have to follow their requirements with regards to how much renewable energy, the minimum amounts of renewable energy that we must procure, and participate in programs that ensure reliability of the grid. But they don't have any say in terms of what happens with our net surplus at the end of the year.
And essentially, the governing board could raise rates if they desired to create additional excess revenues.
They could, certainly. As an elected official, I guess that's one of the benefits of being a part of a community choice energy, is that you're representing your community, you're an elected official to your community. It's much easier for our customers to participate in our rate setting process than it is for them to go to San Francisco and speak to the PUC about the rates that are being charged by SDG&E. They can come to our meetings, and our elected officials listen to the customers and are, I know, keenly, always concerned about rates and what customers are paying and balancing that with everything else in the budget. But the rate setting is purely the board's decision-making.
I'm glad you made the point, and I quite like the point about consumers being able to come to a local governing board of which their cities or elected representatives to complain about rates. I have a feeling we're all in for a lot of calls as energy costs go up. We've certainly all been, I think, fielding a lot of calls about SDG&E's rates. And one of my deep concerns with the entire CCA, CCE construct is a fear that at some point an agency like the JPA or a future council or future councils of other entities will see this as a revenue opportunity because any excess charges that are derived, any excess profits that are derived, in my opinion, constitute a tax. And because of the way utility rates are paid by everyone in fairly equal amounts, I see it as a potential for a severe regressive tax that would hurt working families the worst. So my deep concern, and while I do support the measure, and I believe I'm supportive of moving forward with CEA, I just want to sort of make the warning or call on the council and future councils for years to come to not see any opportunity to raise revenue, I think it's an inappropriate place to create revenues. I hope all of you feel the same way. Whenever we do look at generating revenues for whatever we're generating revenue for, I hope that we can have a fair and equitable model for taxation and not one that's regressive, that harms working families the worst. So I just ask us to keep that in mind, and I'd ask you as leaders to keep that in mind that when you're thinking about rates. But I really do appreciate what you said about people being able to come and speak their mind locally. I think that's a really big deal, and I do believe strongly in the principle that government closest to us governs the best. So in that vein, I can support that, and I'll be right there complaining about rate increases with everybody else if there's anything that I think that we can do to moderate those prices. Councilman Joe Green.
Deputy Mayor, if I could just add two more quick comments to your questions. One is beauty of community choice. If the customers aren't happy with the rates, they can opt out. The other thing is, I just want to again reiterate that while our current study shows a savings, I can't stand here and guarantee that there will be a savings. We will strive to always set rates that achieve that savings, but we're going to have to set rates to cover our costs. And our rates are significantly lower, and their customers have to pay the exit fee, which we can only control to the effect of us participating at the PUC. So our report looks good today. We're going to try to achieve that, but we can't guarantee that that's where we're going to be in April of 2024. But that will be our goal.
I think it bears saying that, I was in a meeting 4 years ago with the president of SDG&E, and he looked at me and the other people in the meeting and said, "You don't get it." We were talking about the coming CCE, CCA policy and how it was going to affect them, and he said, "You don't get it. We're exiting the energy generation business." And that was, a surprise. They abandoned the desire to compete for energy generation, understood that the future of their business is in transmission and maintaining the infrastructure. And so, I assume that for the next 25 years, at minimum, they're going to be offering a product. However, I expect as their customer share lessens and they purchase fewer contracts for future energy generation, at some point, obviously, they're going to be a higher cost and less of an alternative. So I don't know that people will always have a viable option, although I would love to see a system where if there's another agency somewhere in California, I would love to see people be able to choose and say this one is all hydropower or all wind power or all hamster power, whatever it is. People ought to have the right to choose, because we could do that with a large grid. You ought to be able to opt into whatever type of power generation that you believe is best for the environment at whatever cost it's available. I think we should have a marketplace of energy options. And so anyway, back to Councilman Joe Green. Thank you very much.
Sorry, my mic button was not working. So I definitely also support that, and I apologize for misconstruing what you wanted to do. To have the city on 100%, heck yeah, man. We can afford it because we pay a really high electric bill anyway. So I think that does show great leadership on the city's part. So when you bring back this resolution, please make it state that the city would like to start with our city services on 100% renewable, because I think that that's pretty an awesome statement to make. And the fact that it's a little cheaper right now and maybe about the same cost, who knows, in 2024, I'm okay with it, because we should be, as a city, setting the example. I mean, I set the example at my personal home as well, so I like doing it at the city if my colleagues are into it. The other thing that I heard here is knowing that excess revenue is not regulated in the power industry. Dang, Frank Dodd Act in the mortgage industry came down and helped that out. I'm hoping some type of government oversight will come in, because who knows what you're really paying per kilowatt. Like, if SDG&E won't even show you and you're going to be the new energy company, think about how hard it is for us as consumers to figure out what is the actual cost to run my microwave. So I'm stoked. Hopefully some good oversight will come out of this. the question I had, and the main reason I pressed my button is, do we need an actual motion for this since this is a workshop, or do we just need consensus to bring this back as stated for the June?
I think we've got your direction. And
Do
we can-
you?
Yeah, we can bring it back in June.
For sure. I'm just messing with you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you so much. So yeah, we want it to be on the agenda in June. Sorry, our city attorney is saying something probably super awesome.
So I was just going to say, and I understand the council's desire to want to set the bar in the city in terms of the city's accounts and go with 100% renewable. I might advise or caution that we wait until we see what the 2023 vintage fee is, because that could dictate what our overall rate structure is really like. The city council still may want to or may not mind paying more than what the SDG&E rate is, but I would say that at that time you could make that decision for how you want to treat the city counts. Getting some stares, so you may not.
I would
want to do
just say
but-
that we approach it with the intent of 100% renewable energy as long as it remains fiscally responsible for the citizens of Vista. I think that's a good way to put it. Thank you, sir.
I like your approach.
Can I just add, Deputy Mayor? The one thing I think staff needs, we need to know what baseline product we are going to auto.
Not yet. Yeah, we just need to know today that you're wanting us to join CEA. That's it. We'll bring back the resolution and the ordinance on June 28th. And then once we join, we will come back to decide who's going to be the member, who's going to be the alternate, what our baseline is going to be. All those decisions will be forthcoming.
Very good. Councilwoman Contreras.
Well, this has been a fantastic discussion, and I don't foresee an issue with the city being 100% renewable with our own facilities and whatnot. I think it's the responsible thing to do. It sounds like our baseline, when we get to it, is not going to be 100%. It may be 75%, and it may be at the very bottom tier. But it does seem like we have a consensus to move forward with CEA. It seems that everybody is good with the voting structure of one city, one vote. And I'm really excited to be moving forward, and I can't wait for it to be June for us to have that next discussion. And outside of that, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. I would add, I'm not 100% with one city, one vote. I wish it was based on some kind of allocation of costs, but that being said, the construct is already in existence, so I'll acquiesce to it. Our city manager, Patrick Johnson, has very good. Well, with that, seeing no other speakers, I believe we were adjourned.
Mayor,
Oh, I'm sorry.
oral communications.
Forgive me. Do we?
We don't have any
We
oral
don't have any.
communications.
We don't have any
submitted.
elected oral communications. So having no speakers.
But before you close.
Oh, council
Good.
comments.
I just wanted to introduce, I'm sure all of you know, but Caitlin Elliott Norgrove is in our front row here, and she is our new Climate Action Program Administrator. And Caitlin has been our grants writer, very successful grants writer, and has been recently promoted. And so she's doing two jobs. So we're going to slow play the grants writer position of hiring that, and we're going to have her work both jobs in the interim. But no, I just wanted to introduce her. She is going to be taking over a lot of the climate action issues. John has been asking for this for 5 years or more, and so it's time. And but Caitlin will be assuming a lot of those roles. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew who Caitlin was, both on the dais as well as in the audience. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Any other comments from the council members? Then, without objection, we're adjourned.